STEMology, a young scientist survival guide, session 24. Welcome, STEMologists. This is your host of the STEMology podcast, Alina Adams, and I'm super excited to introduce a new program that we are implementing at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And I have here with me Emma Helm, and together we're going to discuss something that might very well change the game for a lot of pre-med students. So welcome, Emma. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for helping me join you on this opportunity. It's been a really fun ride so far, and I'm excited to see how this helps the UMKC students.
Me too. We have been working pretty hard to gather up all of this information and create this organization on campus called the PreMed Prep Program. And currently we are a sidearm of PreMed Society, and hopefully it won't be that way for long, but as PreMed Society shows us the ropes and introduces us to what it takes to become an organization on campus, I really hope that we can bring you all the information that we've been gathering over these last few years as pre-medicine students in biology degrees. So Emma, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm excited. You've actually had me on this podcast before, so hopefully some of you guys that are regular listeners recognize me. But for those of you that don't, I am a biology major at UMKC. My plan in the future is hopefully to become a physician. I'm in the process of filling out secondary applications right now. So I've had a decent amount of exposure to the pre-med process. So I'm excited to share all of that experience with you guys. In terms of other things, I'm involved in a lot of activities outside of this biology major that I've got going on for me. But those include mostly volunteering, other outreach organizations, and now this awesome pre-med prep program.
Yeah. And when I came up with the idea to start this program back in May of 2020, it was like a huge aha moment, because I remember going through this huge process of gathering information from all these different sources. And I'm sure you had a similar experience of reaching out wherever you could, from your biology academic advisors to random YouTube videos, like doing whatever you could to find out more information. And it seemed like the best source to get this information from were students who were in medical school or who had already gone through the process. Is that kind of how you felt too?
Yeah, I felt like a lot of the time my only resource was my advisor, and I felt like reaching out to him all of the time kind of frustrated him probably, but I didn't think that I had really other access points, I guess, to all of the information that I needed for medical school and the whole journey. But after having a few friends get into medical school, that really opened up a lot of opportunities. So I think students helping students is a really, really good plan.
It kind of seems like it's the only plan.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that I was the first person to think of this.
I agree.
So for all of the students that have gotten into the University of Missouri, Kansas City, especially their 6-year program, they have the traditional method as well, you would probably think that this might have came up sooner.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Right? So, but I'm glad that we're changing the game and giving this alternative and abundance of information to students who deserve it, honestly.
Yeah, and then it will always be in this format, this lovely podcast, so hopefully they can access it whenever they need to versus just meetings, and they have it for future reference, which will be really nice for them.
Absolutely, and that's the exciting part about this, is as a supplement to the PreMed Prep program, we are using the STEMology podcast to go more in depth into what we discuss in our hourly meetings. And the idea here is that if you can't attend a meeting or if you have prior commitments, etc., because we know all of you are so busy, we want this to be an avenue of access as well. So we are going to talk about the same exact things that we talk about in the meeting. We might be a little more goofy here just because we have the time to do so. But of course, at any time during this process, you can reach out to us via email. So my email is stemologyssg@gmail.com. And although I am graduating this December 2020, I still know all of the information since I created the program, and I can still help you out or give you more accessible resources. To get started, the first topic that we want to discuss is going to be creating an MCAT schedule for our juniors and seniors who are just now getting into the game, getting into the swing of the intensity of the MCAT and the AMCAS application process.
This is also a really good time for the freshmen and sophomores who aren't quite ready to start getting ready for the MCAT, but still need to work on establishing a study schedule that works for them, because you can try it out with all of your other classes. It's a really good opportunity to figure out what methods work for you versus trying to mooch off of your friends.
Absolutely. Being introduced to the intensity. I keep saying it's intense, but that's because it's so true.
It is intense.
Like, I was blown away the first time I even saw an MCAT question, because not only was I expected to answer the multiple choice question, and we kind of have it conditioned in our mind that multiple choice is equivalent to simple or easy, a straight line. And so when I saw my first MCAT question, I was like, wait a minute, like, why do they have me thinking about chemistry, physics, and biochemistry? Like, this is crazy.
All in one?
Exactly. You don't really think about all that goes into these questions. So the sooner you're able to be introduced to the material, the easier life is going to be.
Exactly. And this doesn't mean start rigorously studying for your MCAT freshman year and study for 3 years. That's not the point by any means, but it is a good time to establish a schedule no matter where you are in your journey, just because it'll keep you accountable for yourself.
Exactly. That's a good point. We aren't saying all of this that you all can jump into it right away, because that's not what it's for. We don't want you to, we're not trying to scare you into studying. I mean, it might help if you have it in the back of your head as something to look forward to, but I say looking forward to it. I don't know if I ever looked forward to it, though.
I looked forward to it being over.
That's definitely, that's
all the hard work paying off. That's what I looked forward to.
That part. So you need to get used to holding yourself accountable. So you can make all of the study schedules in the world. None of it matters if you don't hold yourself to it. None of it matters if you see, oh yes, I really should be studying organic chemistry today, and then you decide, nah, I don't want to, I don't feel like it. So holding yourself accountable is half the battle.
And then actively studying is the other half. You can't just read through the notes and expect to retain everything. You have to actively go through problems and quiz yourself and do all of these methods that you've used trial and error to figure out work for you. But it has to be an active process. If you are just reading or just skimming through information, you're not really retaining anything and you're not learning, and it won't help you.
That is a really good point. There's multiple ways to study. Some people are visual learners, some people like to have things explained to them, etc. There's so many different ways to go about this. So the earlier you start, whether it's an entry-level biology course or if you're taking 400-level courses, you need to know what works for you as soon as possible so that you're able to succeed. And having an MCAT schedule or having a regular class schedule or wherever you are in your journey gets you on the right path to figuring that out. A question you might have is, when should I start studying? What do you think?
Honestly, that's a big reason why you need to figure out your study habits beforehand. I personally started studying about 8 months before I took my MCAT, and then it was delayed, and it was just a whole ordeal that made me lose a lot of confidence just because it was delayed. And studying for 8 months beforehand and reminding myself that I had put in all that work really helped me out. But some people, and more power to you if you can crank through the material in 2 or 3 months and do absolutely fine.
There are study schedules where they can help you study a whole year in advance. There are study schedules that help you study 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance, 1 month in advance. Hopefully not any sooner than that. I don't think that would work out very well. But finding these schedules or these templates and making them are very important, and we have a few resources that we want to show you.
Our first resource is Kaplan. So they actually have a few links that you can go to that provide different amounts of study time. So, for example, there's 3-month study plans, there's a 1-month study plan, I think. They might have a few others, but they really break everything down day by day, and it's not something that you absolutely have to follow, but the thing is, it gives you a really good idea of a way to break down topics that works, and it factors in a few breaks and things in there, which is also something that the AAMC study plans do. So those are really helpful. They're both free resources.
So I did try to use the Kaplan resource. Unlike Emma, I was not too prepared. Like I said, I was introduced to the intensity of the MCAT a little later in my academic career, so I wasn't exactly sure what to expect as we got closer to my test date. So I had used the Kaplan 3-month study schedule, and it went through week by week, every single schedule for each text. And that was probably a little too intense for me. Studying 3 months before the exam when you don't know what to expect is not a good idea. Making sure that you are planning out all of this in advance is key to success. So if I would have had a full year or 6 months even, I feel like I might have been a little more successful. And that's one of the reasons why I feel inclined or even obligated to share this information, because you all deserve to know what to expect and how to prepare in a way that works for you.
Another important thing to consider is that you do have obligations outside of studying for the MCAT.
Absolutely,
so you have, a lot of you guys have jobs, a lot of you have other hobbies.
Maybe and kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids, families, there's so many other different things that can be affecting your life, and the MCAT should not be all-consuming. I know sometimes it feels like it is, or this whole pre-med journey feels like it is, but you need to make time for other things, otherwise you will truly feel like you're losing yourself, and that isn't going to help you in any aspect.
Yeah, I had heard stories on YouTube or things like that where it's like how I studied for the MCAT in 1 month. And the part that they don't show you in these videos is how much hair they probably lost, how much sleep they didn't get, how they never saw their friends or family because they were in their rooms studying 12 hours a day. And I promise it could work, but you don't want to risk it. You have so much on the line. You've worked too hard to wait until last minute. So I have a few tips and tricks about how I stayed organized and held myself accountable, but I'm going to let Emma tell you hers first.
Yeah, so I used a hodgepodge of different resources whenever I was trying to figure out my study schedule. I planned almost everything out on a paper calendar, and I would try to keep myself accountable based on that. But then I would also make Excel sheets with different topics. So say on Mondays, I studied biochemistry. I would review a certain chapter or topic, whatever I was on that day, and I would write down any issues that I had on this Excel sheet, and I would look into what the issues were. So if it was something I didn't understand, if it was just something I didn't remember or misunderstood, and I would make a note, and then I would write down an explanation. And I had this whole Excel sheet by the end of it, and I could reference it. So I could go through and quiz myself on that, and I made this as I went through my study schedule. So I was able to make notes on both, and that worked really well for me. I also had apps and things that I downloaded on my phone, so there was a lot of ways that I kept myself accountable.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I mean, it paid off. So that's the key here. First of all, you need to know what you're aiming for. So if you go into it just eyes closed, just do the best you can, like, yes, that's great. I mean, doing the best you can is like always great. But you need to have maybe a target score in mind. That way when you're taking these practice tests and flipping through your flashcards and studying, you know what you're aiming for, you know what to focus on, you know where there might be holes. But again, staying organized in this way is going to be your key to success. I gathered information and tools from a lot of different websites and from my peers and professors, and that's a good method. I feel like there's not always just one thing that's going to work for you. So reaching out and finding different methods, even what Emma and I are talking about here, might not work for you. Hopefully it does. That's the reason we created it. But the way that I personally did it was through an Excel spreadsheet as well. So I had my full schedule laid out. I studied a lot during the semester, and during the semester, I first put in all of my classes. I had 2 jobs at the time, and I put in both work schedules, and I put in meal times even, because I really like to extend those out sometimes and take my time eating, and that just wasn't going to work. There just aren't enough hours in the day. So I set aside time for exercising, my volunteer work, my shadowing, and just write in MCAT. And from this time to this time, my phone was off. I really just took that time and dedicated it towards the MCAT. And not everything, like we said, is going to work for everyone, but schedule in those break times, those meal times, times to exercise for your friends, family. Like Emma said, all of that is very important to your success.
For those of you that are having a hard time visualizing how you can organize this, AAMC actually has a really good resource. If you go to their website and look into this planning and study materials, they have a PDF that you can download that talks about different strategies and even has calendars that are broken down into study time, days off, work, everything like that, and it just gives you a visual of what a mock schedule could look like. So yours doesn't have to look exactly like that by any means, but it does show you an idea of what's feasible and then gives you a starting point.
Yeah, all of that was a good point. You can definitely find any of these websites. Just quick Google searches, even just saying template MCAT schedules or template class schedules, and just fill in the blanks. The next topic we wanted to discuss is how to find good MCAT study materials or these resources. So quick overview for myself, like Emma and I talked about, we both use pretty good amount of sources for our study material. But the two things that we thought it was important to keep in mind is that you're looking at content versus practice. So content meaning making sure you have all of the information for all 7 topics of the MCAT. Maybe 6 topics. I don't know if you can really study for cars. And then for practice, of course, it's just going through questions, thinking how the MCAT thinks, and getting used to the template of the MCAT. And then the other 2 factors that are important to think about are the cost, right? So not all of us are super affluent in this way, but there are very high cost options in the thousands even. And then there are lower cost options. So some of these might be free. Some of them might be less than 100 up to, I think 400 or 500 is still kind of in our low cost category. But we're just going to list them here for you. And of course you can do your own research. Actually, I suggest you do your own research and look more into these programs.
Yeah, these are just a few that we have either used and we enjoyed or we found just through some quick Google searches that we think would be helpful. But we broke them down into content and practice and high and low cost just to give you guys an idea. So in terms of content, the best ones that we could find included Kaplan programs, Princeton, Pixarize, Varsity Tutors, Blueprint, and Study Schedule. So a lot of these also offer lower cost options. So if you hear Kaplan or Princeton or any of the others more than once, you can just browse through their websites. There's multiple options that they have available, and there's something that works for everyone. So on those low cost content options, we have Kaplan books, Princeton books, AAMC materials, Khan Academy, Magoosh. So like with AAMC, for some people who are closer to getting ready to take their MCAT, there is a fee assistance program. So a lot of study materials can be gained from that, and there are other benefits that can be gained from applying for the fee assistance program. So if that is something you might qualify for, definitely look into it because it could be a really helpful resource that could provide you with access to more study materials. In terms of practice, higher cost options include Altius tutoring, one-on-one tutors, Jack Weston program, and Blueprint, while lower cost options that we enjoyed were UWorld, AAMC materials again, Jack Weston, Blueprint question of the day, and Kaplan question of the day. And some of those question of the day programs, I guess you could call them, actually do just give you a free question every single day. You can download an app, you can pull it up on the website. There's a lot of different ways to access those, and they're pretty helpful. They give you a question, they give you an explanation, and easy as that.
And a lot of these sites, I think it's pretty cool to mention, offer apps that have flashcards with them. So I know Magoosh and Princeton both have an app where you can go through flashcards in your free time. So maybe on the bus to school or walking in between classes, you could quiz yourself. And I think it's pretty cool to use your time in that way because with so many things that we juggle, you kind of have to prioritize what's important and kind of fit in where you can.
The MCAT is the reason I started listening to podcasts.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Which ones did you listen to?
Oh gosh, there's one called, I think, MCAT Prep or something like that. I couldn't quite remember the name, but there's a few. I have an iPhone, so I use the podcast app that they have, and then if you just look up MCAT resources or MCAT in the search bar, it pops up a whole bunch of them. So there's a few that are available.
So these are the ones that we know of, and I really want you guys to know that this is not a cumulative list. We're not getting paid to promote these materials, and that's why we chose them or anything. We literally just Googled them. It's kind of word of mouth, how we heard of them. If they're not on this list, it doesn't mean that they're not good. It doesn't mean that they're unimportant or they don't help you. It just means that we didn't know about them. There are a lot of materials out there, and I really would appreciate it if you all would, after this video, just comment a few of the programs that you know of that are out there. I know that other listeners would really appreciate it too. All right, so the third thing that I wanted to talk to you all about are our core competencies from the AAMC. So being a pre-med student gets pretty difficult sometimes, but not for the reasons that you would think about always. There's a lot that goes into being a young professional, right? Right? So some of the things you have to think about are your behavior in and outside of class. So how you behave on social media, how you talk to professors, whether or not you like showing up late to things.
And it stays with you. So if you're looking for people to write you letters of recommendation and you showed up late to their class all the time, they will remember that. And we'll talk about stuff like that on a different episode, but just to touch on it right now, since we're going to delve into those core competencies, people remember. People notice how you act and carry yourself, and it makes a difference.
It's even those tiny things too sometimes. Like if you never once came to class outside of sweatpants, I feel like, it's such a little thing that doesn't really matter, but showing that you care, perhaps asking questions in class, introducing yourself to professors. Like I said, we're going to go into this a lot later, but as I go through these pre-professional competencies that you can find on the AAMC website. So if you want to study these a little more and figure out how you can become that perfect pre-med student, I really, really recommend reading into these for a few reasons. So one, because you do want to be a good student, you do want to show that you care and that you are able to be kind of that pillar in the community and someone that your peers and society can look up to, as doctors are supposed to be. But a second reason is that these are things that medical schools look for in your application. So they look for your service orientation. They look to see if you have good social skills, if you can behave well, if you have cultural competency, if you're reliable, things like this. So all of these are things that they're looking for all throughout your application, in your personal statement, throughout your experiences, all of that. So we're just going to hop in here. So the first pre-professional competency is going to be service orientation. So you want to demonstrate a desire to help others and show that you can be sensitive to others' needs and their feelings, and show that you are able to elevate other people's stress and that you care about other people, that you're able to act on your responsibilities to society, locally, nationally, and globally. The second one is social skills. So you want to demonstrate an awareness of other people's needs, goals, feelings, and the way that social and behavioral cues affect people's interactions and behavior. And after you notice that, you want to be able to adjust your behavior accordingly and appropriately in response to those social cues. And a lot of that just has to do with treating other people with respect. The third competency is cultural competence. So you want to demonstrate a knowledge of socio-cultural factors that affect interactions and behaviors. So you want to be able to show respect and show that you understand and appreciate other dimensions of people outside of your own cultural group. So there is an obligation to inform one's own judgment, that you're able to engage in diverse perspectives as a resource for learning and work, and appropriately address bias in yourselves and other people's. Acknowledge that other people are different from yourself, and you want to internalize that difference and be able to accept others and appreciate people for their differences. Teamwork is another one. So it's very important to be able to work in a team setting, at the same time providing constructive criticism, but being able to put those team goals ahead of your own personal and ambitious goals. This next one focuses on communication. So this is oral communication. You should be able to effectively convey information to other people using spoken words and sentences, and be able to not only speak effectively, but be able to listen effectively as well. So you should be able to recognize potential barriers and adjust appropriately. This next one I appreciate a lot. It's ethical responsibility to yourself and other people. We're going to touch on this a little bit more later on in the episode, but being able to be ethical is a lot more difficult than you might think sometimes. So there are going to be situations and times where it would be easier to do the wrong thing. You need to be able to understand that taking responsibility and cultivate personal and academic integrity is important and develops and demonstrates an ethical and moral reasoning beyond yourself. This next one is reliability and dependability. So being able to consistently fulfill obligations in a timely and satisfactory manner, while also taking responsibility for your personal actions and performance. Hold yourself to higher standards to be able to do the right thing. Resilience and adaptability. Demonstrate a tolerance for stressful and changing environments and situations. So noticing that difficult things are happening, and this is probably going to be easy for students during 2020. So going through that COVID-19 quarantine situation shows adaptability. And the last one that I want to go through for pre-professional competencies is going to be our capacity for improvement. Being a pre-medicine student and constantly aiming for improvement as you learn new concepts and skills and you engage in reflective practice for improvement is so important, because every single day as you go through medical school and as you go through life, you're constantly learning and you are expected to grow as you go through these things. There are 4 thinking and reasoning competencies as well. So the first one is critical thinking. The second one is quantitative reasoning. The third is scientific inquiry. And the fourth is written communication. So all of those are critical for being a scientist. And the last group is science competencies. So these are living systems and human behavior. So being able to apply the knowledge and skills in natural sciences to solve problems related to psychology, sociocultural, and biological factors that influence health and well-being.
So right now in a meeting, we would usually touch on wellness and give you guys some tips on either healthy recipes or some stress relief, helpful wellness checks that can get you through the day and maybe help you unwind after a stressful pre-med kind of day. But since we can't really do a Q&A type of thing right now, we'll ask you guys to put tips and things like that in the comments. Otherwise, I did just want to give you a reminder to make sure that you are looking after yourself, because it is important to stay in touch with your needs, and you can't just rely on grinding all the time to get everything done. You have to take breaks. You have to be able to say, hey, you know what? I've been studying all day. I'm tired. I'm just gonna go to bed. Sometimes that is the best thing for you, not studying till 2 a.m. trying to crunch everything into your brain. But yeah, it's helpful. Just look up some meditation techniques, some yoga, recipes, something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be any of those things I just listed off, but something you enjoy and that helps you unwind, and make sure that you're checking in with yourself, because it is really, really crucial. Just in life in general, regardless of the MCAT, it's crucial to check in with yourself so that you feel bright and full of life.
Ready
and not
to take on the day.
Exactly. Not like you're lagging behind and unenthusiastic, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this lifestyle of constantly studying and being ambitious and reaching your goals, like, it does get draining after a while. You're going to go through ups and downs, and it's basically a roller coaster emotional toll. But being able to recognize when you're having those lows and trying to compensate in whatever ways that you can is half the battle sometimes.
Agreed.
So what do you do personally to relax and unwind?
So personally, I grew up in a smaller town, so I really enjoy horseback riding and being outside and stuff like that.
Wow, yeah.
So just because I got used to it when I was younger, and it's just really stuck with me. But if I'm not able to access things like that, sometimes I'll even just sit there and just do something completely unrelated. So if I've been on my laptop all day, I might just sit there outside and like people watch for a little bit or something. Or
okay,
just,
isn't it kind of weird how much fun people watching?
Yeah, like it just distracts you, just as long as it's something, not in a creepy way. Like,
no, absolutely not.
Like, I just kind of sit there outside my apartment and like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just hang out.
It's like bird watching.
Exactly, yeah. Like, I don't just watch, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just something that takes your mind off of what you've been doing for the day and what you've been studying and trying to retain. It's really helpful to just think about something else for a while. So, like, I'll try new things. I've gone out and tried to play tennis. I'm not good at tennis, but I tried it.
I mean, that's important, yeah.
Yeah.
One quote that I had from someone who was on the podcast previously, and one thing that we had talked about is sometimes when you're struggling with a concept, just stepping away for a moment, it all rushes into, and you have that light bulb moment where you're like, aha, oh yes, that's exactly what that was talking about. Okay, now I understand. And so when you're frustrated or you have those frustrating moments, taking a step back and looking at it from a wider view, or just letting your mind linger on the subject as you people watch or make brownies or something, kind of helps all the pieces fit together. So typically during a meeting, we would have homework assignments, right? These are things to get you on track to reaching your goal of medical school. So beginning as soon as freshman year, PreMed Prep assists students as they develop the skills and the knowledge necessary to not only excel on the MCAT, but matriculate into medical school on your terms. So that's the important part here, is matriculating into medical school on your terms. You could possibly have to retake the MCAT again. You could possibly have to reapply for a second cycle. But the important part is that you have all the information and you're not having to reapply or retake the MCAT because you weren't prepared, but instead because perhaps you want to do better, or you know you can perform better.
I think it's also important to say, since we brought it up, that retaking the MCAT or reapplying is not something to be ashamed of. A lot of people kind of keep it this hush-hush topic that they retook the MCAT, but so many people I know that have taken it, are retaking it, or are considering retaking it, or are considering applying it a different cycle, and it's completely normal. There's a lot of people that do it, and it's not a weird thing to do. It's completely normal.
I am extremely glad that you brought that up, because it is kind of stigmatized, like, oh wow, maybe I'm not smart enough, or man, maybe I just am not meant to be a doctor. But there are so many factors that go into you being an applicant that really just holding on to that idea of that limited idea of I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not cut out for this is mind-blowing. Like, if you keep trying, if you have the right resources, the right people behind you, you really can do whatever you want. It also took me like 5 seconds to type in how many people matriculate into medical school, and the first thing that came up was this fact saying in 2018 to 2019, 21,622 applicants were accepted into MD schools out of the 52,777 who applied, for an overall acceptance rate of 41%. So 41%.
That's wild.
Exactly. So much less than half of the people who apply actually get in each year. Do not let that hang over your head as something that's embarrassing.
It's not.
It's not. As I was saying before, we typically do a homework problem or question, activity, etc., whatever, each meeting. And the homework assignment that we chose to do for this first meeting is to research 1 to 3 medical schools, however you want to do it, and find details on their mission statement, their personal priorities that are important to you, the location of these schools, so that could be whether or not it's in-state or out-of-state, and then the tuition and costs that are associated with that location. A lot of the location could have to do with the diversity that's available, the quality of life, the city environment, the public parks that are available, maybe if you like to go running or jogging or play frisbee with your friends. But what's also an important aspect to consider is the school culture, their size, whether or not there's a support network near, like counselors or tutors. Another detail that I want you to think about is the curriculum style. So the quality of the education, the extracurriculars available, the faculty to student ratio, clinical experiences, how many students pass their boards the first time around, the technology that are available, also known as like whether or not they have simulation labs or clinical structures, and then of course research. Something else to consider are the required classes that you have to take as prerequisites before matriculating into that particular school. Maybe one school wants you to take 2 semesters of calc and one only wants you to take 1 semester of calculus. So look at those little details as well. Next are financial considerations. So going back to tuition of in-state or out-of-state, etc., the cost of living, that commute to campus, groceries, gas, utilities, school loans, programs available to assist you. All of this is huge considerations when choosing a medical school, not just the MCAT score or your GPA. But I do want you to take a look at those too. So I want you to look at the MCAT average of the school within the last couple of years and see where you fit into this. Of course, take a look at the GPA average as well and see if you're within 0.1 or 0.2 of the average.
Another helpful resource just for finding most of this information is called the Medical School Admissions Requirements Database, abbreviated MSAR. There is a paid version that unlocks a few more features, so if that's something you're interested in, that is something you can research and look into, but it has a lot of information pooled together in one spot that can give you some insight as to what schools require what or offer what.
That's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. And the second homework, quote unquote, assignment that I'd like you to think about are 3 study materials that you should really research extensively. So be ready to compare and contrast these different resources that we mentioned previously within this episode. Don't only look up the websites, because everyone kind of talks up their products, but really read the reviews on Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Ask your friends who have completed their programs, things like that, to really find what will work for you.
And on a closing note, we do want to just bring up something that is talked about a lot in universities, especially with a lot of online classes and things like that right now, is academic dishonesty. So especially, like I said, with these online classes, it seems easy to look things up on the internet, and doing it often makes it seem harmless. But even if you were to not get caught, and odds are you will, because the people grading your materials are really, really good at their jobs. So don't do it.
It's not worth it. I promise.
It's definitely not worth it. But even for your own sake, if this is what it takes to get through your head, you're not learning this material. So you can't cheat on your MCAT.
Yeah, no one can take it for you.
Yeah, no one can take it for you. You're not going to be able to look something up really quickly.
And I promise it's really going to haunt you later on if you're like, man, I remember we went over this in class, but I cheated on that exam, so I never really studied or learned it fully. That's going to haunt you.
It is. It is. And if you are to get caught, schools look at that. So if you are, if you're cheating during undergrad and you get caught, medical schools will look at that. If you're cheating somehow during medical school, they will see that. It's not a pretty thing.
That's terrifying.
It's not worth it. It's terrifying. It's not going to help you learn. It's not going to help you succeed. Temporarily, it might seem like a Band-Aid that you can put over a problem, but I mean, it's not worth it in any way, shape, or form. You will get caught. One way or another, at some point, people get caught.
And if you're not doing it because you might get caught, do it because you genuinely want to learn the information. But also just be ethical, because medical professionals are seen as the gold standard. They're seen as these model citizens, and you should want to embody the type of person that you want to be now, because people are watching you, as we said before. They're seeing how you behave, and you don't want to have like this stigma or this cheating stench on you for the rest of your academic career. And that is all that we have for you for this episode. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this very long episode, but we really feel like this information will help you all become your best self, and as we said before, matriculate into medical school on your terms, because you have all the information that you need. Well, thank you, Emma, for being here. I'm glad that you were able to go on this journey with me, and as my VP, she is going to be here for all of the episodes that we are releasing bi-weekly. So yeah, thanks, Emma.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great time.
In the next episode of Simology, Som Singh and I are going to discuss his research group, which is called QUIC. And as a medical student, Som leads a very busy life, and I really can't wait for you all to hear how he balances all of the things that he cares about, his job with QUIC and his studies with medical school, while making these major career moves. And it's going to be a great conversation with a lot of information about being a student and a scientist or a researcher. So be sure to tune in next Sunday at 12 p.m. Don't forget to share and subscribe. You can reach me at simologyysg@gmail.com or on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at simologyysg. And there's so many different ways to support the Simology podcast. That way you can continue to hear more of the information that I have for you all. So leave a review on your favorite episode, comment on these, share, all of that good stuff so that your fellow students know that you love to listen. Thank you for listening to our 24th episode of Simology, a Young Scientist Survival Guide. Tune in with me, Alina Adams, for episode 25, the QUIC Research Group with Som Singh. See you next time.